Welcome. In this session, we're going to explore one of the most foundational and most misunderstood aspects of behavioral research: how to ask the right research questions and how to answer them properly using the appropriate methods and basic analytical principles. Many organizations collect data, but very few collect data that is aligned with the question they're actually trying to answer. And even fewer analyze that data in a way that supports valid, defensible conclusions. What we'll do today is walk through the three most common research tools: surveys, experiments, and A/B tests, and clarify the types of questions each one can legitimately answer. We'll also look at the basic statistical logic behind each method: what counts as evidence, what counts as noise, and how to avoid the most common analytical mistakes that lead businesses to draw the wrong conclusions. My goal is to give you a practical but academically grounded framework that helps you make more confident, evidence-based marketing and branding decisions. The research question is the anchor for everything that follows. A well-constructed question determines what data you need, how you should collect it, and what analytical tools are appropriate. In academic research, we often say that a study is only as strong as the question it's built on, and the same is true in business. If the question is vague, overly broad, or fundamentally mismatched with the method, the data becomes misleading. For example, if you ask a causal question, what message increases conversion? But use a survey to answer it, the data will give you a false sense of confidence. Surveys can't establish causality. So before choosing a method, pause and ask, am I trying to measure attitudes? Am I trying to predict behavior? Or am I trying to determine what causes behavior to change? Each of these requires a different methodological and analytical approach. When the question and method align, the insights become far more reliable. Surveys, experiments, and A/B tests are often treated as interchangeable, but they answer fundamentally different types of questions. Surveys are excellent for capturing perceptions, beliefs, and self-reported motivations. They tell you what people say they think or feel, but because they rely on introspection and memory, they are not reliable predictors of behavior. Experiments, by contrast, allow you to isolate cause and effect. By manipulating one variable at a time and holding everything else constant, you can determine whether that variable causes a change in behavior. This is the foundation of causal inference. A/B tests are essentially experiments conducted in the real world, with real customers making real decisions. They have high external validity because they reflect natural behavior, but they require larger sample sizes and careful statistical discipline. Understanding these distinctions is critical. Using the wrong tool for the wrong question doesn't just waste time, it leads to decisions based on invalid evidence. Surveys are most appropriate when your goal is to understand the cognitive or emotional landscape surrounding a behavior, not the behavior itself. They're useful for exploring motivations, perceived barriers, brand associations, and early-stage reactions to concepts or messages. But surveys have a major limitation: they rely on self-report. People often misremember their behavior, rationalize their choices, or provide socially desirable answers. This means surveys cannot reliably predict what people will actually do. From a statistical perspective, survey data is descriptive, not causal. It can reveal patterns in attitudes, but it cannot tell you whether those attitudes drive behavior. So use surveys to understand the mental model your customers hold, but never use them to forecast behavioral outcomes. When analyzing survey data, the first step is always data cleaning, removing incomplete responses, identifying straight lining, and ensuring your sample is appropriate. This is basic statistical hygiene. Next, look for patterns across groups, but be careful about how you define those groups. Demographic segmentation often produces weak or misleading insights. Behavioral segmentation, such as comparing customers who completed a purchase versus those who abandoned it, is far more predictive and meaningful. Also pay attention to the structure of your questions. Leading or ambiguous questions introduce measurement bias, which contaminates your data before analysis even begins. Finally, remember that survey data reflects what people say, not what they do. Treat it as a descriptive layer of insight, not a behavioral predictor. Experiments are the gold standard for establishing causality. They allow you to determine whether a specific change, a message, a price point, a design element, actually causes a change in behavior. The logic is simple. If two groups are identical except for one manipulated variable, then any difference in behavior can be attributed to that variable. This is the foundation of internal validity. Experiments are ideal when you want to understand mechanisms, why a message works, what psychological principle is driving a response, or which friction point is preventing action. They're especially powerful in controlled environments where you can minimize noise and confounds. In marketing and branding, experiments are invaluable for testing messaging, pricing, UX flows, incentive structures, and anything where understanding causality matters. Analyzing experimental data requires comparing outcomes between groups, typically a treatment group and a control group. The key is to determine whether the difference between the groups is large enough to be meaningful, both statistically and practically. Statistical significance tells you whether the observed difference is unlikely to be due to chance. But significance alone is not enough. With large samples, even trivial differences can become statistically significant. That's why effect size, the magnitude of the difference, is equally important. You also need to ensure that the groups differ only in the variable you manipulated. If other factors vary, such as timing, audience, or context, your results may be confounded, which undermines causal inference. A well-designed experiment paired with disciplined analysis gives you some of the strongest evidence you can have for making marketing and branding decisions. A/B testing is essentially an experiment conducted in the real world. Instead of a controlled lab environment, you're observing real customers making real decisions under natural conditions. This gives A/B tests exceptionally high external validity. The results generalize well because they reflect actual behavior. But this also introduces noise, which means you need larger sample sizes and careful implementation. A/B tests are ideal for optimizing landing pages, emails, pricing, calls to action, and any element of the customer journey where behavior can be measured. They're also useful for validating insights from smaller experiments or qualitative research. The strength of A/B testing lies in its ability to reveal what people actually do, not what they say they will do. But to interpret the results correctly, you need to apply basic statistical discipline. Analyzing A/B test data typically involves comparing conversion rates between version A and version B. But the simplicity of the method can be deceptive. There are several statistical pitfalls to avoid. First, ensure your sample size is large enough to detect meaningful differences. Small samples produce unstable estimates and increase the risk of false positives. Second, avoid peaking. Checking results too early and stopping the test prematurely. This inflates your type I error rate and leads to unreliable conclusions. Third, test only one variable at a time. If you change multiple elements simultaneously, you lose the ability to attribute the behavioral change to any specific factor. When executed properly, A/B testing provides some of the most reliable behavioral evidence available to marketers. The most important principle in behavioral research is matching the question to the method. If your question is about perceptions, beliefs, or motivations, use a survey. If your question is about causality, what changes behavior, use an experiment. If your question is about real-world behavior, what people actually do, use an A/B test. When the method aligns with the question, your insights become sharper, your conclusions become more defensible, and your marketing decisions become far more effective. This alignment is the hallmark of rigorous behavioral research, whether in academia or in business. Asking the right research question is the foundation of good behavioral research. When you pair the right question with the right method and analyze the data with basic statistical discipline, you gain insights that are not only accurate, but actionable. Surveys tell you what people say. Experiments tell you what changes behavior. A/B tests tell you what people actually do. Together, these tools give you a comprehensive understanding of your customers, their perceptions, their motivations, and their real-world actions. And when you understand all three, you can make marketing and branding decisions with far greater confidence, precision, and behavioral insight.